Welcome back to Skeptics. This is episode 12, topic Skinwalkers. Before we get started, I do want to let you know that we now have a Patreon set up. You can find that at patreon.com/skeptics, and we have 4 small tiers to choose from if you decide you'd like to contribute to our efforts to publish these conversations about the paranormal. Also, if you enjoy these types of videos, feel free to subscribe to our channel. Click like on the video if you enjoy this one in particular. Subscribing to notifications is a thing that'll let you know when we publish something if that piques your interest. So feel free to utilize any of those options to keep following us. So today's kind of a run and gun episode. What I'm going to do is share some stories that I've received via email since publishing our last episode, episode 11, also about Skinwalkers. Just had a real fun, interesting dialogue with a man named Al. Well, he'll be going by Al for the purposes of this video. I'm going to leave his name and any other names mentioned in his stories out of my retelling. I'll also leave any location names out of the retelling, simply because he would prefer privacy about it. So Al reached out the day we published episode 11, just sharing some basic information about growing up Navajo in New Mexico, what some of his experiences were, as well as what some of the cultural norms were for him and people in his community at that time. He shared a little bit about Navajo medicine practices, instances of medicine and healing and witching and all kinds of other things that he's experienced personally, as well as some that came from his friends' experiences or family's experiences. So I've just had a very interesting dialogue with him and been able to ask him some questions about different things just for my own edification on the topic. And it's been pretty cool. He's been very, very kind in sharing what information he has, and it's been very fun. And I just kind of wanted to share some of those stories with you. So I think the story that I want to focus on from his emails is one that occurred when he was 7 years old, and the story goes as follows. I'm going to do my best to leave out anything that doesn't need to be included on the fly while reading. The primary school that I attended was managed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It was a dormitory school, and it also had homes on the campus for the employees to live in. It was a fairly large area that encompassed about 200 acres. I was with my dad visiting his buddy Bobby. We were by the pickup outside of his house. He was a security guard for the school dorm area at night. He told my dad that him and a bear were playing hide and seek. He said the bear was a person wearing a skin over them, the front paws hanging down, not touching the ground, because the person was slouched over most of the time. He said it would roam around the school area, and he would follow it around as it went here and there. I listened intently as my dad seemed a little nervous, yet he let me continue to listen. Bobby would also go and hide from the bear. It would look for him as well, but usually couldn't find him. He also said there were other things coming around at night as well, but he didn't say what they looked like. Bobby never chased the bear or got aggressive with it. He was just really unnerved by it. He did secretly carry a firearm, though. Eventually, he quit that job, and they never got another night watchman after that. But they did make sure that the indoor guard during the graveyard shift was always a man. The rumor among some people on the campus was that the bear Skinwalker was an employee who worked in the school kitchen. So I was to never hang out in that area, nor to cause trouble with that family's kids. This was my true awakening to what exists at night. I was about 7 years old at that time. So that is just an interesting story. I hate to say I enjoyed it because it sounds like something pretty scary to be faced with at 7 years old, but it creates a pretty, I don't know, I wish you guys could read it instead of listening to my reading because I probably don't do it justice, but it creates a very atmospheric feel, like you can almost watch this dance happening between these two characters at night where you can barely see. kind of scary stuff. Though this was the first experience that Al had that informed him about Skinwalkers. It wasn't the last. He has many other experiences, some of which he shared with me, that have been very interesting and I imagine very terrifying to go through. But he seems very grounded. It just seems like he's taken these experiences and tried to channel what he's learned into like understanding how he can be a good person. If you guys saw the short that we published last week, last week sometime, about Skinwalkers, then you will have read in the text there that one of the takes on Skinwalkers is that they might not actually physically transform, which was a huge part of the conversation that Tom and I had last week, and one of the things we were really skeptical of. But basically, one suggestion is that they are simply practitioners of a type of witchcraft who choose to cloak themselves in an animal skin and under the guise of an animal, like basically go out and terrorize or harm people. And Al seems to think that it's possible that most practitioners do something like that, while like maybe people who have a more developed relationship with the occult may actually be able to transform. Again, this is just a suspicion he has. This isn't something he's like sought to convince me of or anything. As was said in the last episode, I won't shut the door on that. Like the transformation thing, the transmutation, like it could be possible in a way that I don't understand for someone to achieve this godlike ability to transmute matter, but to still just be a person of a very human mind. In any case, the idea of like someone practicing witchcraft and going around in an animal skin, like obviously that kind of stuff has to be real. I would agree with him. That has to account for most of what's going on when it comes to Skinwalkers. If it's a practice you're going to try to engage with, it seems like the most accessible way to do it. And it's a lot of the things that people see in terms of like animals running upright, on two legs and whatnot. It's like those could be explained by someone just covered in a hide. So Al himself practices some ritual medicine and prayer, but he's not like a community healer. He's just someone who, has learned treatments and learned prayers and things that are helpful in the face of curses, witchings, antagonism. He's picked up some of these practices in order to help him and his family and his loved ones. But he doesn't broadcast himself as a healer. I guess it'd probably be helpful to mention what some of those practices are. Let me pull up another one of his emails real quick. Oh, it should also be said that Al's a Christian man, and his Christian faith and his ritual medicine practices, they go hand in hand. Also, he very much believes in the ideas of remote viewing and remote knowledge, and how through some of these ritual medicine practices you can like learn or detect things. And so one aspect of his practices is really to not broadcast what he does, because through the rumor mill or through any of these like divining techniques, he's fearful of, anyone with ill intent finding out that he's someone who seeks to heal and do good with those practices and becoming a target for that kind of antagonism. So anyway, I'll read a brief excerpt from one of his emails about some of the practices he uses. He says, I use my ability of prayer and supplication for my family. If a relative needs help in prayer, I'll do it, yet I don't tell them because my helping may get back to the people doing the witching. Also, my prayers go to the Father in heaven. I ask him how he wants me to pray for them. In turn, I use cedar and eagle feathers. And he explained in a previous email that like cedarwood and cedarwood smoke are used a lot during divination and incantation and healing. And that eagle feathers are often used as a fan to waft the smoke around the people and the area. He says, I'll also use a corn pollen from the top of the cornstalk, as well as something we call bitter powder. It's a counterattack from witching as well as protection. It's a very strong medicine and extremely bitter. Finally, I also use ash from a fire that was used in a ceremony, taking a small amount in my hands, then applying it from my feet to my head. These are protections that I use to conceal me. If I want to see who the person is who is witching another, I can ask it to be revealed to me. Who is the revealer? All I know is that to me it is in an inner voice. It speaks or barely whispers it to me, though I don't always seek to reveal them because those doing the witching may detect it. Then another interesting thing that he said is pretty common to Skinwalker practice, or at least to the evil side of this ritual practice, is that they will place items into a person's body, like into their skin. And he says often it's the bones of a dead person that are put into the person's skin. And he says this can be done remotely, like through magic and incantation, or through a blowgun. And that put an image in my head I've never thought of before, but which is fascinating because like you could really tag someone at some distance. If you had a little dart you whittled out of a dead person's bone, that's kind of freaky. So in essence, through a magical means or a pretty straightforward means, they might seek to put something inside your body that will aid in cursing you. So healers, in turn, can then detect where items might have been placed in someone's body and then remove them. And this can help them to detect who put it there. It can also help them to essentially send the same curse back in the other direction toward that person. So I've had quite a bit of communication with Al, and it's been pretty fascinating to me. And I've got to say, he seems like a pretty stand-up guy, and I find him easy to take at his word. And his retelling of his experiences really has the texture of a memory, not of like a story, if that makes sense. And I'm really glad he reached out and shared some of this with us. It's very good to get the take of someone who's had personal experience with something. Me and Tom and Josh can sit back and talk about, you know, the prospects all day long and what we think about the possibilities. But getting firsthand accounts and being able to evaluate those in some degree, that really feels like the best way to develop an opinion about something. So as of right now, I think I would like to restate my position on the Skeptrum. I think I'm down to a 2 in terms of skepticism, simply because I do believe in curses and the idea of being able to affect someone at a distance and the will of living things being like a force that can carry action to a distance. If these witchcraft practices are simply a way of engaging with that, and it at times involves wearing an animal skin and even like psychically communicating with animals, like I can get behind all of that. All that can be done without the transformation aspect, which is the thing I'm most skeptical about. And then, you know, gotta have a little bit of skepticism for some people's personal experiences with it or their interpretation of their experiences with it. So 2 instead of 1 for that reason, but down from I think 3 in the last video because the Skinwalker practice and its ability to harm people is something that I think is real. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Big thanks to Al for reaching out and sharing those stories. Reach out anytime. I really hope to continue this dialogue. And once again, to anyone watching, if you have not subscribed to our channel, feel free to do so. Click the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Leave any thoughts in the comments and turn on notifications if you would like to be notified when we post something new. And lastly, check out our Patreon if you would like to contribute in another fashion. Anyway, thank you guys for joining and we'll see you again next week.